And we're recording. And on time. Haha. Despite certain difficulties. So, how is everybody today?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear it. So today we're going to be continuing on with primarily Java examples. It's not the most visible projector, is it? Let me see what I can do. Oh, that's so dumb. Look, I've got either right on the screen, or this bank's linked to this bank, so... Well, is this okay?
Yes.
Near complete darkness. We got some pretty good windows in this room, so it's not too bad. Okie dokie. So, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to continue on with our Java intro material that we were talking about last week on Wednesday, 2 days ago. So, we'll be doing some in-class exercises. We'll be learning how to hook up our existing knowledge into Java, and that's going to be the lesson. I'd like to plug something though before we get much further. So, I don't know to what extent any of you have had extracurricular involvement in this institution so far, but on Tuesdays from 2 to 5 p.m. there's a little thing called the Game Dev Club. The Game Dev Club is a club where we make video games. We do not play video games, we make video games. If any of you are interested in learning how to make a video game, I highly recommend coming out to the club at some point. Right? Yeah! Game Dev Club member in this very room. So, the club includes tutorials on various game development technologies, primarily Unity, because I happen to be a Unity guy myself, so that's what I teach.
That is right smack dab in the middle of JavaScript.
Oh, ooh. Well, maybe next semester. But there you go. If any of you happen to not be in JavaScript at the moment, you can check that out.
What room?
Oh, yeah. E121. Thank you for that.
Give us all the time you want, but
Yeah.
we don't know where to go.
Yes. Yeah. May I help out? So, did we go through the IntelliJ installation document? Like, I know I talked about IntelliJ, but I don't know if I showed you where the document is.
No.
All right. So, in Canvas, under Modules, the first section, Resources, has a lot of information that you will find useful at various points in the course. At the moment, these two right here are of particular interest. Downloading the Liberica full JDK, current version, and downloading IntelliJ IDEA. These are links to the respective websites. There is also a PDF guide to the installation of these softwares. So, I'm not going to go through the whole thing in class, but when you want to install IntelliJ on your own systems and not if, I recommend consulting and going through this tutorial document, which is very clear, outlines the steps. If you have any troubles with your if you have any troubles with IntelliJ, I may be of some assistance. Either bring your problem to class or shoot me an email, one of the two, and I will endeavor to help you in your quest. Make sense? So that's where you get that information. There's a lot of other useful stuff in there. Incidentally, don't buy the textbook. You don't need to buy the textbook. The textbook is fine. There's like 2 exercises in the course exercise material that refer to something in the textbook. So the rest of the course you don't need the textbook for. I have the textbook. If you're really curious, you can drop by my office. I'll show you the textbook. You can look something up and then say, "Wow, I'm really glad I didn't pay for this." Finally, there's a section on documentation and templates. These 3 documents are of particular interest. We will examine them in detail as they become relevant, but documentation standards for assignments 0 and 1, this is how to comment. I hope they drilled you reasonably hard on commenting in Python. Then, documentation standards for assignments 2 and higher. Finally, a UML class diagram style guide. When I mark your work, I will be marking it for compliance with these documents. So, if you read and understand these documents and you apply the contents to your own work, then we will have no issues with each other. You will get your marks, and I will get to read code that has documentation. Sound good? Any questions so far? Cool. So, let me just take a brief moment to describe how the weeks are broken down in terms of documents. So, inside of a week, now I remember this room. Is there a little... Oh, there isn't. Okay. These are chalk brush again. You will find that all of the weeks have been organized with this structure. Item 0 gives you a summary of what is being covered this week. Item 1 is your kind of first port of call for the actual course content. You can think of the guide as being the lecture slides. All right? That is where the information being taught is written down. Any subsequent or ancillary material is also provided. 2 and 3 are examples. Example code does not always just mean a fully done out example. Sometimes that is template code for the exercises, right? The exercise documents contain a large number of, well, exercises, more than we could possibly ever cover in class. So, you should consider your implicit homework to be completion of however many of the exercises you either have time for or are willing to dedicate studying time to, or basically drill these things until you feel you've got things under control. Does that make sense? A very useful skill in studying is understanding when you understand something, right? With these, we also have assignment pages, like the assignment descriptions. In this course, the assignments are bundled in the weeks rather than being on like a specific assignment page. So this is where you get your assignments from, inside of the modules. Basically, everything is coming from modules in this course. Aside from the grade book, but for obvious reasons. Does all that make sense? Good? Wonderful. So, let us first discuss our first topic, the hello world in Python and Java. Compare. So, in Python, hello world is very simple. Print hello world. In Java, it is somewhat more complicated, as we discussed last time in class. Public class hello, public static void main, string array args, system.out.println, hello world. Terminating semicolon. Java is an object-oriented language. Nothing is allowed to be outside of a class. That is why we have to open a class before we print anything. Make sense? Public static void main. Those of you who are familiar with other programming languages will know that the main function is often the entry point into the program from the operating system, right? So when the operating system actually executes a program, the thing it starts with is the main function in many, many languages, right? This is in fact also the case in Python, even though you never explicitly write a main function. In Python, if you have a Python file, with all of your Python code, right? The thing which Python does implicitly to make it more user-friendly is to put, def main right at the top. Oh, you don't use further braces in Python. And then everything inside of the Python file is inside of a main function. That's how it considers things to work, right? So in Python, things kind of just execute by virtue of being in the file, but in most programming languages, in order to be executed, you have to put it inside of the main function. So the only things that execute in a Java program are main and anything used by or called from main. Anything that's not used by or called from main is not executed. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Good. So, we also immediately run into a few points of syntax. Python is a language which has been designed to avoid certain repeated characters which occur frequently in most other languages. Understand, for this particular part of the lesson, when I'm describing Java, I'm essentially describing most programming languages at the same time. Most programming languages follow Java in this, not Python. You'll notice these little squiggles, right? We have two squiggles, a squiggle like this, and a squiggle like that, right? These are termed curly braces. Don't call them brackets, call them braces. Over the course of this programming language, you will come to be familiar with many different types of braces. We have curly braces, round braces, square braces, and, if you're lucky, by the end of it, angle braces. Angle braces are just the greater than, less than sign used as braces. All right? A very common mistake that people make when they come to more strict languages is using the wrong brace type for whatever operation they intend to perform. Understand that each one of these different styles of braces has a very different meaning in the programming code, right? In this example, we have curly braces and round braces. Curly braces always delimit code blocks, right? So if something occurs inside of curly braces, we consider that a code block. You guys know what I mean when I talk about code blocks? Is that terminology they used in Python?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. In Python, you indicate a code block using indentation. In Java, indentation is optional and not required. In Java, new line characters are optional and not required. I'm going to show you something kind of fun. But I first have to launch IntelliJ. Okay, everybody, this is your opportunity. I'm taking a moment. Launch IntelliJ. If you haven't already, please do so yourselves. So once you get the IntelliJ splash screen, create a new project by double-clicking. Give it some name, doesn't matter. We can add the sample code, that's fine. And make sure that the JDK is Belsoft Liberica. There we go. So just to recap how one goes about working with this interface, all right? Let's go over some of the basics. Can I increase the size here? This is going to maybe a little smaller. I think I can increase font size in like the main editor, but not in the sidebar. I apologize if you're sitting in the back and you can't see this. There are a couple of seats at the front if you'd like to move up, and you're always free to just kind of roll down the aisle and take a look if you can't see what I'm doing, okay? So, the project folder contains but one folder of interest for us in this class, and that is the source folder. SRC is short for source. The source folder contains the source code for the project. Now, by the end of this course, actually, by the middle of this course, without too much delay, we will be operating with groups of Java classes. These groups, as I mentioned last class, Java expects each class to be in its own file. So when we look at this structure and we see a bunch of classes, those are .java files in the source folder. Does that make sense? If you've got a little play button on the class, that means it has a main function and can be run. Now, you may notice a syntactic difference between the default code which has been dropped in here, which is a hello world, and that which appeared on the slides. The system.out.print line has been put in line with the declaration of the main function. It would be ridiculous to assume that IntelliJ gave us broken code for default hello world, but let's run it just to make sure.
Oh, but I can't run it.
So in IntelliJ, you have to tell IntelliJ which Java class you want to be the one to run. There are two ways of doing this. There's a drop down here, which allows you to edit run configurations. That's the hard way. The easy way is to right-click on the class itself and click Run Main. Main.main. And there you have it. Did that work? Anybody having trouble with it this far? Give me 2 minutes. There are seats in front. Yeah, there's one in the corner up there. And there's one in the corner there. Yes, to the right of me. You'll have to make a new class and copy these. I don't recommend sitting all the way back here. I'll increase the font a little bit, but there's only so much I can do in a room this long. Remake the project and say include default code. There. That's a bit better, eh? So, good. So, in most programming languages, white space does not have what is properly termed semantic content. In Python, the level of indentation tells you where the code is supposed to be relative to other pieces of code. It tells you where the code blocks are. That is not the case in Java. In Java, if I want to, I can put everything on one line, save that up, run it. You can see it runs exactly the same way. I could, if I want, put in some random, well that, actually I didn't want you to do that, but that's okay. I can put in a bunch of random new lines, so long as they're not like in the middle of something important. You run it, oh look, it still works. So, the question then becomes, so why should you not do this, basically? Yes?
There's probably a proper way to do it to improve readability.
Readability is exactly the issue, yes. If you have your code as an ungodly mess like this, it makes it very difficult for anybody to read that code. The fact is, the indentation scheme that you're used to from Python is the same indentation scheme you should use in Java. It's just not strictly required. And you'll find a lot of the time in Java, you'll find like if statements with, that are short, that have all been inlined and stuff like that. Sometimes, for the purposes of like slides particularly, stuff will all be shoved onto one line. So just understand that you're working with a language which is more flexible in that degree than the one that you just came from. Does that make sense? So far, so good? So let me just undo all of that so that we have something that doesn't look too bad. Now, basically, in Python, you had to start a code block with a colon, and then the next line was indented. Here, you start a code block with opening curly brace, and you close it with a closing curly brace, and indentation inside of it is expected to follow the same way as Python, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily strictly have to be. Does that make sense? Important rule number 2. All statements not ending in an open curly brace must end in a semicolon. In Java, the semicolon is the line terminating operator. So this guy tells you when a line has ended. If you don't see a semicolon, the line has not ended yet. So, for example, if I say int x is equal to 5, see, it doesn't even want to let me do it. Int y is equal to 10. Delete. It's giving me the red squiggle of doom. I hover over, semicolon expected. There you go. You put the semicolons in, and it's happy again. Make sense? Again, the only place you don't do that is when you're opening a code block. So you don't do this with if statements, and you don't do this with loops, and you don't do this with functions. Those have curly braces. Make sense? So far, so good? I know it might feel like I'm hammering these points a lot, but honestly, adjusting to the syntax is your job this week. So, good. So, in addition to being able to print things, I showed you some variables, but we'll continue with other things. In addition to printing things, we also have the ability to pause the execution of the program. Thread.sleep is a method which pauses the program for the specified number of milliseconds. This can be used to create more dynamic interaction with the user in a command line interface. For the time being, in order to use thread.sleep, you also have to add throws interrupted exception to public static void main. You are not sufficiently far along in the course for me to explain to you what that means, but it has to do with the exception handling system. Yes?
You need a curly brace after exception now?
Yes, you will. Absolutely. Let me show you how it works. Throws interrupted exception. You just throw that in, and now you have the ability to use thread.sleep, 1,000 milliseconds, and then so there we go. There are a couple of important points before you try this yourself that I have to go through, but I just wanted to show you that it works. So, a couple of important points with respect to the IntelliJ editor. Number one, this thing is an annotation. I did not type it. If you type it, you will get a syntax error. I will show you the process again, but slowly. So, I type the word sleep. You will notice, upon typing the word sleep, we get autocomplete for one of two different ways of calling this function. We can either specify a long integer, millis, which is of course milliseconds, or we can specify that and a number of nanoseconds as another integer argument. Now, I'm going to speak my keystrokes. Opening round brace. You'll notice that it inserts closing round brace as well. I am intending to type 1,000. I press 1, and you see how it popped in with millis. What it's doing there is it's inserting the name of the argument as defined in the library. This is to help you know what the arguments are doing, what they're supposed to be, right? It's for readability. The problem, the mistake that a lot of people make when they're first starting off with IntelliJ and like trying to do what I'm doing on the board, people will type those words out, right? It's important to understand the difference between when IntelliJ is giving you an annotation and when I have typed something on the board. If it's been grayed out like that, I didn't type it. Question?
How do you get to nanos? Like, how do you denote that?
You insert a comma. There you go. We will cover this, a fair amount once we talk about methods and overloading. That's an example of a principle in Java programming called overloading. The method is defined according to multiple definitions. The way that Java selects between those definitions is by how it's been called. So if it's called with two arguments, it uses the two argument definition. If it's called with one argument, it uses the one argument definition. This is a little bit different from the way that things work in Python. And it's very different from the way that things work in JavaScript. In JavaScript, if you don't supply enough arguments to a function, it supplies the undefined literal wherever you have not defined something. But again, Java is to JavaScript as car is to carpet. So anyway, that's how you sleep a thread. Any questions? So far, so good? It's not too bad, right? As long as you get over those pitfalls, it's not too bad. Good. Now, let us speak for a moment on the subject of commenting. When should you comment?
A lot.
A lot, correct. Whenever possible. Yes. We'll talk about documentation, I think, in this as well, but let's get the basic syntax out of the way. So, in Python, you only had one line commenting, which,
We could kludge up multi-line commenting.
hmm?
We could kludge up multi-line commenting.
Did you cover it in class?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did? With the 3 quotation
Yeah.
marks? Yeah, but you can't use it everywhere. And it's less flexible.
Well, it's a kludge, so.
Yeah. So, like, in terms of like a general comments, you've got this guy, right? I think I have to use red. I don't think the green shows up very well in the dark room. That's better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So, I don't even know why I keep green markers. Anyway. Incidentally, does anybody know what this character is actually called?
Pound sign.
Not pound sign,
Number key?
not number key,
Hash.
not hashtag, not hash. The actual term for this symbol is octothorpe.
I was just
It
gonna
gets,
say that.
it gets beat up when I call it that, though.
Yes. Well, you know, you just, what you do is you just, you know, give it, there.
Oh.
Now it's a nerd with a name like Octothorpe. But you know, nerds probably named it, so. You know. Anyway, so in Python, in terms of like comments you can put anywhere, you really only have single line commenting. There is a form of multi-line commenting if you provide 3 double quotation marks. This you can only use in specific points, and it's hooked into Python's help system. So if you put it right underneath a function definition, you are defining the help text for a function in Python, right? To contrast, in Java, we have C-style comment characters. So the octothorpe becomes 2 forward slashes. In addition, we now have the multi-line comment. Slash star starts a multi-line comment. Star slash ends a multi-line comment. Anything between these 2 symbols is commented. No matter how many lines, no matter what the content, no matter anything. Make sense? So, for example, this is a comment. This is also a comment. Notice that before I end that, it has literally commented out the rest of the file, right? Oh, put it in for me, thank you. Thank you, IntelliJ. So, there are lots of things that you can do with this, which are, you know, possible through like shortcut keys in editors in Python, but, you know, it's nice to have an actual symbol for it in the language. You can comment out lines of code. You can comment out large blocks of lines of code. You can comment out entire methods. You can comment out entire classes if you want to. Anything can go inside a multi-line comment. But here's the kicker for you. It's also an inline comment. Right? So, not only will it do multi-lines, it will also not even do one line, if you wanted to. Literally, from the start to the end, no matter where that start and end occur. Lots of fun stuff you can do with this. And there's one little, you know, advanced programmer's hack / trick that I like to show people. if you take this final, if you take the ending */ and you comment that out, right, using a single line comment, it still functions to end a multi-line comment. But it means that it's also been commented out and is not considered part of the program. So, if you had just, */ hanging out on its own line, that's a syntax error. Doesn't mean anything without the opening, right? But if you've commented it out, then the compiler doesn't complain at you. And then, if you want to toggle sections of code, all you have to do is add or remove the top comment rather than the top and the bottom comment, and that's ever so slightly faster. So there's a little trick for you. Now everybody will be able to do their assignments with 0.5% more efficiency. So, any questions? Yeah, it's just comments, right? So,
Do you prefer the, are we fine to use inline commenting or like off to the side, or do you want it in blocks?
So, there's what I prefer stylistically, and then there's what you're going to be marked for according to the style document. So I'll talk about the style document because I actually don't really care how you comment as long as you comment, if that makes sense. Some people like to leave their comments at the end of the line. That's fine, it's good. Some people like to put it on the line before. That's also good. Putting it on the line afterwards, I think, is not as good. If you're going to comment, leave the comment before the thing you're commenting on, or at the end of the line, not after. That just confuses things. But let's talk about the documentation standard for assignment 1. Now, assignment 1, you don't really have to do anything with writing methods or classes because it doesn't go much further than the JavaFX stuff. But we should still talk about it. So that's why the documentation standards are going to change. Once we've gotten through and we're writing more complicated programs, our level of sophistication will improve as well with our commenting. So here we go. This is no longer true. You should not include the package. That's okay. I'll talk to the course writer. So first of all, it's important to note 20% of every assignment grade is for the commenting. So if you do not comment your code, you are walking away from 20% of your grade on the assignments. So we have talked about the multi-line comment. Let's examine this one. You may notice that there are more asterisks going on here than we've talked about so far, right? So this is how we are expecting you to do your comments. These comments are compatible with an automatic documentation generation system called JavaDoc. JavaDoc is a program which scans Java source code and automatically creates websites and PDFs, whatever you want, that capture the comments left in the code as documentation that you can easily, browse if you're a person trying to learn how to use the software, right? In order for JavaDoc to work, though, the comments have to be a bit more refined than just the standard multi-line comment that we just talked about. You need a couple more characters. Just understand that these still count as standard multi-line comments. the existence of this character and of that character, character combinations, just star and the first slash and the first star, and then the last star and slash, those are the multi-line comment characters. It is still a perfect, like it's a vanilla multi-line comment in that sense. When you add the second star, that is an indication to JavaDoc that that is a specific JavaDoc comment, right? In IntelliJ, JavaDoc comments can be auto-populated with a certain amount of information. And depending on what visual theme you're using, they'll show up in green. That's actually like a really useful thing, and I'm highly tempted to just turn that on now because that's like very useful. Give me 1 second, please, folks. No. There we go. Appearance, theme. Oh, yes. Darkula. Lovely. There we go. So, first of all, dark mode. Dark mode for the win. Always use dark mode. I know that dark mode is a meme, but since all of you in this room intend to have careers that will be mainly spent staring at computer monitors, dark mode bombards your eyes with fewer photons. It's easier to read, it's easier to interact with, and it causes less eye strain over time. So it's actually technically more ergonomic to use a dark mode when available on your programs. Okay? So it's not just the meme, it is actually like scientifically superior as well. So you'll notice the difference that now appears between our JavaDoc comment and our normal multi-line comment. One is highlighted in green, the other is highlighted in gray. So if you are wondering whether or not your comments qualify as JavaDoc comments for the purposes of me marking them, put it in Darkula and ask yourself, is this green? If it's green, then it's good. Green means go. Make sense? So, the question then becomes, where do I put such comments and what do I put in them? So, in this course, you are expected to have JavaDoc comments for all classes and methods. Every single one. I will be checking for the completeness of this. I will be assigning I will be deducting the most grades for missing comments. So, to JavaDoc a class, you start a JavaDoc comment on the line above the class. Press enter, and there you have it. Right? This is an in-class example using many comments. Make sense? You will notice that when I created the JavaDoc comment for main, some things were added by default. Comment tags. Where you have the @ symbol followed by param for parameter, throws for throw, return for return. You are providing a description of what these things in the code are. So what IntelliJ is prompting you for is, please give me a description of the args parameter. All right? So, in our case, we don't use it. So we can say unused. Throws interrupted exception. I think you can just leave that. Above that, you provide a general description of the method, you know, what you would think of as the comment text, right? So, for example, you know, this main method tests out some features of Java. You will notice as well that the star, it's maintaining that those stars, like on this side, it maintains those as part of the editor function. I believe those are technically not required, but they're nice stylistically, and the editor just does it for you, so there's no reason to change that, basically. So that looks nice. That's a nice JavaDoc comment. Don't worry about the fact that it doesn't have another star there. You can put it in if you want to. It's optional. Make sense? What I'm most concerned with is that you can generate the JavaDoc from it. So, if you go to Tools, Generate JavaDoc. It gives you a bunch of options. Ignore them all and click Generate. Oh, except you need the output directory. Users, me, documents. Okay. Generate. It automatically opens the generated web page. So you can see, in unnamed package, I have class main description. This is a class example using many comments. That was the text that I actually put in the source code file. Very nicely organized. If you click on main, you get a description of all of the things inside of main. There you go. Including the main method. You can click on that, get further description. Unless you set up the JavaDoc comments correctly, you won't be able to generate this thing. This is actually how modern software projects have this sort of thing done. Like if you go to GitHub and you have a software project that uses, this is actually, it's not just JavaDoc, it's a documentation system called Doxygen, which does a lot of different languages. You can have it set up so that GitHub will automatically run Doxygen or JavaDoc on your files, collect up these files, publish them to another, publish them on the web as the help for your project, and it'll do that all automatically if you set it up correctly. So this is very useful, and you should use it. Any questions? Okay. And hopefully, what you actually put in a comment is something that they covered with you last time. Any questions? I asked that already. Good. One of my university professors said at one point that to me, or the class, it was a class at the time, one of my university professors said that software documentation is like sex. Even when it's not very good, it's still better than nothing. So, good. So, let us now try some exercises, shall we? If everybody could please load up the exercises for week 1. we will take a look. So, for us in this class right now, oh, did you have questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, like later on when you have a chance, did you help me out? I'm having difficulties with mine. It says that I can't use the interrupted exceptions, which is
Oh.
a habit.
This is actually I will be able to help you almost immediately, as I'm about to assign a problem for the class to work on, and I will be walking around the room telling people.
Perfect, thank you.
So, all right, folks. I would like everyone in the class right now, in IntelliJ, to solve problem B for me right now. Write a program that displays the following two standard outputs with a half-second delay between each line. It is the word Java spelled out with the letters of the word Java. Okay? So, you will need print statements, you will need thread.sleep, and that's all you will need for this one. Question?
How many milliseconds or is a half second?
500.
500?
Yes. The term milli means thousand, so there are 1,000 milliseconds in 1 second, therefore half of the second is 500 milliseconds. Go! Go for it!
That ain't dark mode.
Yeah, that ain't dark mode at all. You had a question?
Yeah, just because I was having issues, like everything else works, and when I take out the thread sleep and throws interrupted exceptions, the code runs fine. Just whenever I try to put it in, I'm having issues.
Yeah,
Absolutely, sir. Did I really just stop it? I really hope it wasn't bad. I don't want to do it more. Let me try this.
Yeah, it has two R's. Throws interrupted exception. That's now, of course, incorrect. That might not be the only issue, though. Let's see.
So,
Yeah, there you go.
why did it?
That's red, but it.
First rule of coding, so if it works, it works. Don't push it.
Yeah, exactly. But still though.
It might be because I was having some issues with the installation when I was going through with the command prompt part. It said I didn't have any Java stuff installed, but everything runs fine for the most part. Mine's the fact I can't spell.
Well, now it's using Libera. No, it does say that you have errors, but not resolved since scanner.
Oh, just because since it's not being used, it's just causing problems?
Try remaking the project.
Alright.
Yeah. Let me see here. New project. Let's take a look. Liberica. Yeah.
That makes it just wait like 10 seconds before going to the next slide.
Somehow, I don't know how this happens, but somehow, the version of Java that's doing your, like, underlining is different from the version that's running it. I don't know how that would
The
happen.
only, I think I know, because I had a previous version of this installed, so when I went to read it, like when I was going through the steps, I just updated it, so like delete the old version, reinstalled the new version. So I think that's probably it, because I kept my old settings and configurations. I deleted the old version, but it kept the settings.
Maybe, yeah, go for like a complete reinstall of everything. follow the instructions in the thing, and hopefully that goes away.
Alright.
Because, like, it's not interfering with you functionally, but
It's
like,
absolutely obnoxious.
that will eventually, it'll impact your ability to debug.
Alright, thank you, sir.
No trouble. Very nice. It's actually, I'm gonna color it.
This is so much time. I knew it was a shortcut, I just couldn't remember it.
You're even allowed to use that as a shortcut on the test.
How much I did last time.
Okay, everybody, I have a great gift, the shortcut for system.out.println. If you type S out and then tab, it'll fill it in for you. So you don't have to type system.out.println each time. Sound good? And as stated previously, if you do main and then tab, it does public static void main string array args. Okay?
I am done.
Excellent. Yes, we will be moving on in a few minutes. Just giving people a chance to actually get something. If you're finished, or if anybody is finished, anybody who is finished, you may do question C. Question C contains a couple of interesting points. When working with strings, you can insert a tab and a new line using \n and \t for new line and tab. Try to use those to create this table with one print statement. Anybody have any weird syntax problems? Or any errors you don't know how to solve? Things pretty good so far? problem is that there's a missing name between the name of the class and, the name of the file and the name of the class. Yeah, in Java, those two are accepted to be identical. Yep. You're supposed to make them pop in, but only on the times that they have a second delay using thread bells. Try that. There we go. Okay, we'll give this activity another minute or two and then we'll move on. Okay? It's also tedious to practice your scales on violin. You're supposed to use a backslash. Cool. All right. Hopefully everybody had a chance to get something working. We shall move swiftly on. Here we go. There. So, variables, input, and output. So, variables should be a concept you are well familiar with from Python. In general, the way variables work has not changed. What has changed is that they are a bit more restrictive about how you use them. A couple of the, if you want to call them nice features of Python don't exist here. So, let's consider some Python code. X is equal to 5. X is equal to the string 5. And Y is equal to 2.3. Technically, the equal sign should be pronounced as is assigned the value, but we'll just say equals for now. All of this is correct in Python. But particularly that second line there, well actually every single line is wrong in Java, but particularly that second line is wrong. So, when we declare a variable in Java. We must declare it with a data type. Anybody who is used to any non-dynamic language will not find this surprising. Java is a statically typed language. This means it does not do type recalculations on the fly, like Python does. When you declare a variable as an integer in Java, it is an illegal operation to assign to it anything other than an integer. So, this second line where we are assigning a string 5 to the variable x doesn't work in Java if that x variable has been declared integer. The string is not an integer, therefore that's a type error. And a type error prevents the thing from being compiled. That's a compilation error. So, further, variables cannot be used unless they have been declared. On this line, if we declare if we assign the value 2.3 to y, it has not been declared with a data type. Therefore, you will get an error, assignment to undeclared variable, something like that. You declare it, in this case as a double, and then you use it. You must declare it before you use it. So, I already had a couple of declaration lines previously. You can see I declare an x variable, I declare a y variable. They are used and assigned in the same line. Now, this is a somewhat important point when we get a little bit later in the course. At the moment, it doesn't really matter that much if you declare on separate lines or on the same line. Most people will end up declaring and instantiating on the same line, as that's somewhat easier. But once we get into objects, declaring a reference for an object and creating that object, those are two operations you will sometimes do in different parts of the file. But, you know, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. So, let's talk data types. In Python, they kind of do as much as they can to hide data types from you. But we still have our set of basic data types. Who can tell me what int stands for?
Integer.
Integer. Very good. What is an integer?
Whole number.
It is a whole number, positive or negative. Yes. What is a double?
Floating point number.
It is a floating point number. Yes. In fact,
Error.
yeah. I must be confusing myself with another language. So, what double means is double precision floating point number, right? I'm confusing myself with my C# right now, where that's a more...
Well, the air conditioning.
I hope it's not going to do that a lot. Holy crap. Like, all right. I am not shouting over that thing. shout over it, so there we go. What a way to run a railroad. So, what was I talking about before we were so rudely interrupted? Floats? Okay.
What percentage is floating point value?
So, a double is a double precision floating point number. Floating point numbers are a very specific thing. They are hardware accelerated. They have a standards document which specifies how they are put together. We are not going to be studying it in this class, but it's very interesting reading material. Basically, sorry, yes?
Is the double only go to the first decimal point, or would you have to do some other short?
Oh, no. A standard floating point representation is 32 bits in memory. A double is 64 bits in memory. That's like, it's a double, like, that's where the word double comes from. No, you actually get about 15 decimal places of precision with this number. So, no, you don't have to say triple. You don't have to specify how many decimal places you have. Yeah. Any other questions? Good. How about bool?
True or false?
You may be used to bool, but here it's called boolean because Java is the most verbose language. Booleans are true or false values. Because this is Java, when we declare a boolean, it can only ever be a true or a false value. Finally, strings. You will notice that string is capitalized and that it's not orange. That is because in Java, strings are considered a class, not one of these other guys. So when I say one of these other guys, the proper and technical term for ints, doubles, booleans, shorts, longs, short and long are just short integer and long integer. It depends on, it tells you how much memory to use for the integer. These are all known as primitive types in Java. Now I understand that that's not a PC term, but that's what Java calls them. So ints, doubles, and booleans are called primitive types. All other types are constructed from them in one way or another. Is that again?
What about char?
Yes, chars as well, yeah. Good. That actually brings up an interesting point, because probably most of the people in this room don't even know what a char is, because of Python. So, I know it's very tempting to have conversations while that bloody fan is going, but I would appreciate if you kept it to a dull roar, because I'm having to shout over that thing, and I don't want to have to shout over you guys too, okay? I appreciate it. So this is a very important point, actually, about one of the big differences between how strings are done in Python versus Java, right? In Python, you can use double quotes, you can use single quotes, they both mean the same thing. Both mean string. In Java, double quotes and single quotes mean different things. Java has a character data type, a single character. Python pretends that characters are singleton strings. In Python, when you have a character, you don't have a character, you have a string of size 1. That's the way that Python prefers to think of things, even though that's confusing the data structure with the contents of the data structure and is, you know, from a mathematical standpoint, it makes me cringe so hard, but that's Python for you. Here, a string is an array of characters. The character is the basic type that composes the string. You indicate a character with single quotes. If you provide more characters within those single quotes, that's a syntax error. That's only allowed if those two characters actually form one character, as with the new line character. The new line character, although it has both a backslash and an N, is considered one character in memory. It's just, you know, the return key, right? So that is a character. A string is delimited by double quotes. It's not too hard to remember because double quotes are longer and single quotes are shorter, and characters are typically shorter than strings. Does that make sense? There are a couple of other additional things as well. One thing in particular. They probably didn't tell you about null termination strings, did they? Probably not. So, let me ask everyone a question. This string, hello, how many characters do you think it has? 6. How many people think 6?
I feel like that's wrong now.
Seven.
Yeah, this is definitely a trick question.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a trick question.
New line characters.
Nope, there's no new line character. So, this is how strings work in general across all programming languages where these details are useful. And like, this is how the bloody kernel works, right? The only thing that differs is how programming languages hide this fact from you. That string in memory is as follows. We have the H, the E, the L, the L, the O, the exclamation point, and then a special one, the null character. The null character terminates all strings. The reason for the existence of the null character actually has to do with the way that the C programming language works. So in C, C has no ability to check for array out of bounds errors, which sounds strange to people who program in modern programming languages, but in C, when you have an array and you read past the end of the array, right, it just lets you. If you're reading past the end of the array, it's just taking whatever is in memory after the end of your array and it gives it to you. That data is most of the time nonsense. Sometimes it's your other variables. Sometimes it's your other data structures. Sometimes that exceeds the little sandbox that the operating system has given you for your program, and that causes a segmentation fault. So, the solution to this problem that was devised for string operations is that all strings should stop with a character that can't be printed, and therefore cannot ever be a valid string character. That is the null character. There we go. I was afraid for a moment that we would have to go to the subscriber-only portion of the lesson. That's a joke about the structure of podcasts. Anyway, what was I talking about? Ah, yes, strings being objects. So, strings are objects. The name of the string, the name of the object variable itself. Java considers that a reference variable. When you use equality comparison on a reference variable, it is not checking the contents of the object, it is checking the reference itself. So, the response variable, this is how it works. The response variable is a reference to some place in memory where a string is stored. The other one is also doing that, it's just doing it anonymously. So, each of these has an address in memory. So this one might be stored at 800, this one might be stored at address 1630. When you say, does response equal anonymous, you are asking, does 800 equal 1630? It's pulling in the actual values of the addresses. That's almost never going to come out true. It's not looking at the contents of the strings. So you may ask yourself, well, if that's the case, how does one compare strings in Java, as that seems to be a very useful and necessary thing to do? This is a wider convention within Java. Java classes will typically include a .equals method. The .equals method is a method, it's an operation, which actually digs into the contents of the objects and checks to see if the contents are the same, rather than merely comparing the references. So, given that response is a string object, we can call .equals on it, give it black bear as its input, rerun the code. What type of bear is best? Black bear. And there we have the positive response. Question?
I also noticed when you gave the double equal sign, I highlighted the double equal sign, and then you right click on it, tell JWatch to give you this is what you can do instead of, and it gives you the non-equal.
Yes. So, yes. As is pointed out by your colleague, that same operation which I just described can be performed reasonably automatically. If you notice that the double equal sign has been highlighted in yellow, and right-click on it, it gives you options to fix it, and will even do that automatically for you. So that's good, help is good, but you should know how things work as well. So I don't always use all the things they do. Any questions about this? Shall we do an example then? We will do an example, and also we'll have like a 5-10 minute break, just because like a 3-hour class is a long time without having any kind of break. So let me just put the exercise up on the screen, and you can have whatever break time you don't use for break as time for this. So. I recommend this one. Write a program where the user enters a favorite food, color, food, and animal, and the name of a friend, and it outputs a string. I had agreed that name a color animal and said it tasted like food. where the capitalized words are replaced for whatever the user enters through the command line. Make sense? Good. Question?
So like Python, is there a way to create a string that has functions in it? Because like we have F strings and have curly brackets in them.
Boy howdy, yes. System.out.printf. So system.out.printf is actually a reference to the C standard library printf function, which has lots and lots and lots of fun features, which I don't have time to get into, but there's documentation on it. All of your, like, you know, format a double so that it has X number of decimal places, do it in scientific notation, put so many spaces before it, pad it with so many zeros, include negative signs or not. All of those types of options are included in the functionality of the printf function. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's probably pretty close to what you're talking about with Python as well. Sorry, question?
How do you represent the variable in the printf?
So usage is, the first is the format string. Actually, I'm going to need a variable first. Let me put that here. Or no, let me do it in the other. Q is equal to 100. There we go. So D is the format tag for an integer. So it just prints it. Notice that it doesn't insert a new line. If you want a new line in there, you have to include it. And like, if you want to include like X amount of space, like 9 characters worth of space, padding, you can see how the padding works. There are lots and lots of different options. This is only a few. But you can see that, like, it's allowing the integer 9 characters of output. So that's what the number 9 does there. And you can use any number you want there. And it has lots and lots of options. So, sound good? So all of your fancy stuff is in printf. Cool. Right. Hereby and forthwith, by power invested in me by the College of Mohawk, I hereby declare a 10-minute break. We shall resume class at approximately 3 p.m. In the meantime, please work on the problem. And yeah, that's it.
Let me ask you, so the thing that I was thinking was that but it wasn't given.
Give me 1 second. That's probably because probably understand the way you made it and or why. So Java, your class name is expected to be exactly the same as your file. So if you modify your file name, it's kind of provide those as additional arguments.
So if you put like together, like Docker,
But in the same formats.
so let's say we have to create an accent to
Well, if you want X, then we'll keep it like that. Yes, and it matches it as to like its positional. Cool. Great. I will, sure, yeah. First, if you want full marks, you have to do the job dogs. These all are documentation. Documentation standards. There you go. Secondly, so what we want to do is we want to provide a description of what the purpose of the class is, what the document. Like, the fact that it's a class is described by the fact that it's a class. The point of documentation is not to restate what the code will be. It's to explain what is meant. It's like, what were you trying to get? Right? What were you trying to do? It's not like for example, now, in your particular case, this is like your first real job class. So I don't think any of the comments of this type are wrong. This like you're actually learning to structure the code, right? Yeah, exactly. So in this case, I'm like, yeah, this is for us. Now, it's like, don't imagine that you just have to type a lot, right? It's like, one of the things you should, one of the places you should write a comment from is you should assume that whoever is reading your comments at least understands enough about Java to be able to be there in the first place, right? So you don't have to explain what that is. You don't have to explain what you're able to do. You don't have to explain what you don't have to explain that, you know, if you don't have to explain that you're basic stuff. What we need to say is what you were intending to do. Right? That's especially for the method. Of methods, describe what the method is supposed to do. Right? Functions. And for a class, describe what the purpose of the class is. Now, code loaded class. That's it's going to be a little difficult because it's like, what's the purpose of this class? The assignment is to write that class period. But eventually, we will have like a half dozen or more different classes each week. So when you document those, you have to tell me what the purpose of each of them is. Right? Does that make sense? All right. Excellent. Yeah, but like, it's so loud.
Story where you get like a smell sometimes from I think this was they were doing textile.
Really?
This week thing started off and they were doing textile stuff, so they were teaching people how to like automated stuff.
It does, that would explain the high ceiling. Yeah. Huh. Well, but I don't have a mic either, because there's no batteries.
So I'll get into it. I'm asking for it, one landing for 3. And then I'm putting in 4 straight for So there's a line, and there's a line.
Yeah. It's one of those little things about Java.
Okay, so after I do the line, I go into the
I'm not like I'm not oh sorry.
is it because I'm pressing enter that is putting in the dash and then the edit and then so when it's reading it,
Something like that. I'm actually not sure why I'm So the break is officially over, but we're going to take some time to wrap up the that programming example that y'all are supposed to be working on. So swiftly, swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. So that's an excellent question. So don't worry about static void. Static means that the definition of name attaches to the class rather than a particular instance. But that means like we have to get into object oriented first. Void just means it has no return value. Right? So it returns void. Right? Yeah. Main just is the main string array, so that's a string array. Right? Args, basically in the command line, when a program like this has were to write, you know, bash java foo.class 1, 2, 3, right? This is the command line invocation to run the compiled foo.class file. To get that file, you have to call javac foo.java. First, that creates the foo.class file, then you run foo.class into Java. This should sound pretty similar to the thing I was talking about last time, right? And then, if you provide additional things in the command line, you end up with the value of args inside of main will be 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's what args is for. It's not super relevant in this class, as we are never gonna be calling Java programs from the command line, so we'll never really have an opportunity to provide command line arguments, but that is something that you can configure inside of IntelliJ projects to be able to send these things. But it's not something we're gonna really be dealing with, so. But I admire your thirst for knowledge. Eventually, it's not going to be a major component of this class, but we're going to learn how to do that in JavaFX. And we'll learn how to use advanced systems. Sorry, do you have a follow-up question? Yeah, returns something. No, it returns away. Like, you can use the return statement, but if you provided something, then that's an error, because it doesn't return. So yeah, if you want to terminate with a return statement, you can do that.
So I was just having a bit of an issue regarding some of the inputs and such. So when you were doing the various example earlier, I just wasn't sure. Oh, yeah, when I came back, I made my own, just whatever. But it's not working. So whenever I run the code, it just ignores them. Yeah. So I just say put 7 here, 7 there, and then it just skips them.
Unfortunately, you have to clear the buffer. So I'll go over this on the board. So a number of you have run into an issue. Sometimes it requires this, sometimes it doesn't. It's a little bit finicky. May I have everybody's attention, please? Thank you. Sometimes you need to clear the buffer between reads from the buffer. I forget why this is the case, but basically, it has to do with the way that standard input works. If you're getting an error where you enter one element, you enter one thing and it reads it fine, and then you ask for another and it fails to read it or it skips it somehow, insert the following line. Input.next line. That will clear the buffer and fix that error. Again, I forget why particularly this is the case that fixes it, but it does. While we're on the subject, I'd just like to show you a quick little thing. If you're new to coding, and if you're in an environment that does not strictly require spaces, you may find yourself putting spaces all over the place and having terribly formatted code, and that it might be a pain in the butt to clean up manually. There is a shortcut for code reformatting. Yes, reformatted code. There it is. Control-Alt-L. Control-Alt-L will undo all of the terrible things that you've done, you terrible, terrible person. Control-Alt-L, well, most of them anyway. Do you want to remove custom line breaks? Yes. Boom, there we go. Auto formats your code to look nice and neat and clean and easy for me to read while I'm marking assignments. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. So, we shall now talk about JavaFX. This is where the rubber starts hitting the road with respect to, did you correctly install Liberica? The reason that we use Liberica and not the default Oracle version of Java is that it includes the JavaFX libraries, whereas the one that you probably already have on your machine that you got because you play Minecraft, that version of Java will not likely include the JavaFX library. The JavaFX library is basically a reskinning of HTML form elements and SVG graphics. One you will have hopefully studied in HTML and CSS. The other you will study in JavaScript this semester, SVG graphics. You don't actually have to manipulate them at that level. We are going to use Java methods to draw things on a screen, basically. So, number one, you need the template. So, the template file is fxgraphicstemplate.java. It is available from the weekly module code. So week 1, example code. Click download example code. Save it somewhere. Extract that bad boy. And you will see you have a number of different Java source code files, the top of which is FX graphics template. Do not click and drag this file into IntelliJ. It won't work. IntelliJ will link to the file rather than create a local version inside of its source code folder. The way that you do this is as follows. Create a new class. Call it FX example or whatever you like. There we go. So far, so good. Now, take the FX graphics file, open it with Notepad. There you have the Java file. Control-A to select all, Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste. And there you have it. Delete the package information and change the class name to whatever you name the file. In Java, the file name is expected to be the same as the class name by the compiler. So if we call this fx example, suddenly it's no longer complete. Good. If you have done all of that correctly, we should be able to run this program and see a blank window. Run fxexample.make. And there you have it. A blank window. If you can see the blank window, put your hand up. If you are having excessive technical difficulties, please put your hand up. Oh, IntelliJ on here is, are you already sorry. So you have to make a new class for IntelliJ and copy the file contents. Right click, drag it. Yeah. Okie dokie. So, over the course of this course, we will actually learn what all of this code means. We're not there yet, though. We need to do a bit more object-oriented before we get there. For the time being, note that this is where you set the size of the window, and this is where you give the window a name. So, if I wanted to make my window slightly larger, maybe 500 by 500, and give it the name my example. If we run that, you can see it's now bigger, 500 by 500. The name of the thing is my example. Having difficulty? Yeah. Taking your class. delete that. What is currently in it? Application. Oh, you mean. So, you know the file from Canvas? Just delete everything in there and copy the contents.
That makes sense.
Not using my beard. Okay, so let us draw some fun shapes. So this is Java, so we do everything with methods. The thing which draws is GC, the graphics context. All of our draw methods are methods of GC. So, to do something like draw a rectangle, GC dot, you can see we have a long list of autocomplete methods. Draw, oh yes. You've either got fill rect or stroke rect. That is, you get an outline of a rectangle or a solid rectangle, depending on which of those you choose. This method expects 4 parameters: x position, y position, width, and height. So, if we do 50, 100, 150, 200, and then run our program, you can see we now have a rectangle. Fill rect. Fill, of course, draw.
So he's looking for 5 or 4.
A filled rectangle. Question? You need to have an arrow. That's not working. That means you're probably not using the Liberian
I went and set it up, had some, just giving me a bunch of errors.
Make a new project. Oh, it is using my direction. Very strange. Cancel.
I have.
Try making a new one.
Alright.
Yeah, it's gonna be like, it's gonna be the programming quote. X and Y position relative to the top left. Okay. Your attention, please. Thank you. So, in addition to rectangles, you can also draw circles, also known as ovals. If you wouldn't mind keeping it down in the front row, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Stroke, oval. Basically the exact same idea as the rectangle. All it does is round the edges. But x, y, width, and height are the same. You'd think that it was like, if this is a circle, you know, it'd be like middle, point, radius, but actually no. So 200, 200, and 50, 50. And there's a cute little circle. Make sense?
Yep.
Good. So far, very black and white. Yeah. So let's get colorful, shall we? So you will also get used to this when you're working with SVG graphics, but essentially, here's the way that this thing is thinking about color. All right? The program has a stroke color and a fill color, which are global properties which are set. So you can think of stroke color and fill color as being properties. There is a command to change those properties, but any draw action which is taken draws from these values to determine what the color of the thing should be. So, for example, if I gc dot set stroke, and then I pick color, color dot red, that will set the stroke color to red. Now, very, 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 very important. Another common pitfall with JavaFX. You see how I have written color.red, and I get 3 options here for autofill. The actual text itself of 2 of them are identical. Now, don't ask me why this is the case, because I find it very annoying, but This top one is derived from the JavaFX scene paint library. This is beautiful and lovely and good, and everybody loves it, and it works. Color.red from java.awt is nasty and ugly and bad and evil and will not work under any circumstances. This one works, this one doesn't. It's very easy to confuse them. You will know you've goofed it up if IntelliJ automatically imports the java.awt library at the top of your file. It will not work for mysterious reasons. You won't have any idea why, and the only thing that seems to clear it will be to completely restart from the top and, redo the whole file. So, it's particularly important because once you select AWT once, it kind of like locks it in for okay, this is the user's preference, they're using this library, but it's the wrong library. So it'll follow that error all the way through, for quite some time, and it's very difficult to get rid of once you've made the mistake once. So, please, 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 whenever you're using autocomplete with any of the JavaFX stuff, make sure that the thing that you're auto-completing with is in fact the JavaFX library and not java.awt. Thank you. Public service announcement over. So, if I set the stroke color to red, you will see all of the stroke commands that are taken after that point use red, but fill commands do not. Right? Fill is a different color. If I want to change this halfway through to green, for example, make sure that's JavaFX. We get one thing in red, we get one thing in green. Is this making sense so far? Question? Yes, we did the thing I told you not to do. AWT! Delete color.red completely, retype it, and do it properly this time.
How do we know if it's AWT or not?
It will give you a compiler error. So, good. Any questions about this so far? So far, so good?
Yeah.
Good. So, you can also do text. You see dot fill text. Text has the text you want as the string as the first argument. Hello, JavaFX. After that, you have position. Say 10 and 10. Hello, JavaFX. Right there. This is the default font and font size. If you want to set a new font, that works pretty much the same way that setting a new color does, except that you also have to create the font. I will leave that as an exercise to the reader. because it is important to me that you all get an opportunity to try out the JavaFX drawing, and I have more time to walk around and solve people's problems. Okay? So, in the remaining time in class, I would like you to draw me a pretty picture. I wish you to draw for me either a house, a snowman, or the Olympic ring symbol. Don't worry about like the part where it cuts out for the rings to overlap, just circles. One of those three things, please make that in JavaFX, and that will be our exercise. I will also say that your assignment for next week will be to make a screen from the popular Nintendo Entertainment System video game Arkanoid. You know, not in the full depth, because this is vector graphics and that was sprite graphics, so like there's a certain amount of it doesn't work just at that level. But it's, you know, just basically like bricks and a paddle and a ball and that kind of stuff. That's going to be your assignment for next week. So it's quite heavily involving this. It also works in the take input from the user interaction that we did earlier in the class. So that's basically what your assignment for next week is going to look like. Question? You can use, to do this, only use what I've shown. Oh, yeah. You only need to use what is currently on the screen. Okay. So, where are my problems at? Who's got problems? Problem. I'm gonna go this way.
Great. I was wondering about the text.
Text?
I got carried away.
Oh.
I saw the word.
That's again, it's auto-completing. I didn't write text.
Sir. Simple shit.
All of that.
Polygon question?
Yeah, so, you wanna see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, perfect. And, okay, it's kind of almost number of points. Upside down, but yeah.
So you have to declare the array on the side. Yeah, because I use square, but I use a list, that's probably why.
Yeah.
Why do you declare the array with square?
So the square brackets at the end of oh, it definitely does lists. Yeah. I can talk a little bit about Razor. Yeah, no, that's just an array. Instead of round, all like